Hey guys, welcome back to another video. My name is Luxani for short. Lux is totally fine. I am a wannabe content creator. So if you've been following me for a while, you've probably seen me from when I made my Shadow Me videos. And yeah, the last one I made was a Shadow Me video related, so fun. So I like to gossip a little bit, talk about personal experiences within being in the art program, especially, just getting myself out there, sharing you my crazy experiences and basically how being a artist is kind of like doing teaching. So I am a teacher, which is really interesting. Kind of hard, honestly. It's a little scary, but it's pretty cool. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about how some really healthy ways to learn art while keeping track of your own personal goals of improving. But first thing you might be thinking is, I'll probably be saying to change your personal art style. That is definitely not what this is about. As an art teacher assistant, I've learned a lot over the span of a year and how improving one's mind is more important than controlling the way your pencil works. So, it's gonna be like simple things that you probably hear all the time, but now you're given the reason why behind them, which is honestly one of the best things I can advice for people, especially if they're getting into art. So this is not just for beginners, but this is for intermediates and advanced people as well. Oh, my cat wants to say hi. Say hi, kitty. Say hi, Lucina. Say hi, Lucina. Good girl. So cute. Oh, she bonked her head. Anyways, let's get back to it. So the first one I would recommend is to have low expectations. Believe it or not, this is a huge problem when it comes to beginner artists. They set high standards for themselves without realizing it, which is kind of a really huge letdown in the end because, no one wants to be set up for failure. So you're kind of setting yourself up for failure, which is something you're not really supposed to control, supposed to do, but how can you control something that you don't realize, So it's like a bad learning habit. So when learning art, you're not expected to learn every single thing right away. You're a student, so you're still learning how to do most things, like grasping the elements of shape, patterns, ideas, and art techniques. So what makes you think you were gonna call you out for being Leonardo, It's just crazy. No, that's not how it should be. So if you feel like you need to master your craft within a semester of school, well, guess what? No, you have to develop your skills as an artist and continue practicing. Right? That's crazy. Because nobody expects you to become like the next Leonardo da Vinci or Caravaggio. I mean, come on, let's be realistic here. They took years of studying to perfect their craft, and you have a semester or however long you are in school. Patience is key. But for the people that are not in school, same thing applies. Your patience is key. You're just doing your best, and that's all that really matters, right? Like, you just really need to do your best. The second one would be to, believe it or not, this is actually super, super interesting. Yeah, can you guess? Have a good teacher. I know. So not every teacher is a good teacher. So not every art teacher knows how to teach, specifically like certain things. So speaking of patience, this might come as a shock because I'm going to be brutally honest here. The only reason I would know this is because as a college teacher assistant, that is how I see, how I learn, how I'm going around talking to students and asking them about, what it's like to be under my mentor or what it's like compared to other professors. So most of the time they say if the professor just does not want to work with them or just does not want to give them the time of day, they feel disrespected and just don't want to continue art. And honestly, I'm not that surprised. In fact, it's actually one of the most common things to ever occur because if I'm going to be honest, on my first semester when I decided to switch from marketing to art, I had a professor who just had this big ego and he just did not want to step down from it, and it just did not go well. In fact, it was incredibly annoying. A lot of students had told him to kind of humble down in a way, oh, well, sir, we're just learning, we can't be experts. He's like, nah, if you guys know, you guys should know, who you guys took video classes within your high schools or whatever. So no, we didn't have a video class in my high school. They didn't have video class in some of their high schools, so I don't know what this guy was talking about, but he was an example of a bad teacher, and I'm gonna be honest here. There are many bad teachers that I have met. Yes, I've met quite a bit of them. But my mentor, the one that is I'm working under, happens to be pretty good, honestly. Except when it comes to personal, biffs and biffs when it comes to students where they have some personal reasons why they can't do certain, assignments. That's more like on their part. So it just really depends on the mentor who works for you. And honestly, having a good teacher also kind of figures out what kind of art style you want to go for. So if you want to be like the next, designer, I would say, graphic designer, you want to follow someone who's very into that type of work. If you want to find someone who's more into like classical paintings, you're definitely going to want to go back to the old masters like Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and things like that. If you want to go to watercolors, you want to probably check out some watercolor artists on YouTube, or some older ones as well. Like when it comes to just research, do your research. You'll find someone, you'll find someone that you like. And I guarantee you, it ain't gonna be that hard. It's actually great. It's pretty great. But you just have to put the effort into it, So, not every teacher's a good teacher. Just remember that. So, third would be to manage your time. Yeah, this is easily the most common thing many people have as a negative rather than a positive. And the best way to configure your time correctly is to simply track your time. Make a planner, grab a planner, get a notebook, maybe even something simple as paper to take notes. My personal recommendations are having a planner to help you out because they're so organized to the point. The only thing you need to do is write in them. Plus, if you're a note taker like me and love using different pens and stickers when making notes, this is definitely the way to go. There is an app on the iPad called GoodNotes if that's something you're interested in using when taking notes. You do have to pay for it though, it is not free. But there's also one called Planner, but this one I only recommend if you're having nothing better to use and just need to use everything on the iPad and your life is on the iPad. But I personally need to do notes because, notes for me is just a little bit easier. I guess I'm old school. The reason using your time wisely is important is because you need to take constant breaks, maintaining a healthy balance with social life, school life, if attending. If not attending, then you need to also balance your personal life. So hydration, and also you just need to balance time for art. This is something I highly recommend. And let's be honest here. We are probably juggling so many different things on a daily basis that we probably don't have time to even sit down and write in a planner. But you need to constantly make the time, give up something in order to do something. And unfortunately, that's kind of how it goes sometimes. I have to give up, I guess, an hour of working just to meal prep for the next coming days for work. And honestly, as much as I hate it, trust me, I hate it with a passion. It has benefited me more because I was able to eat, I managed my time, and I was able to focus more on things. So we just have to sacrifice some stuff, and we can probably sacrifice the small things or do two things at the same time. So for me, I need to wash clothes. For personal life, I need to wash clothes and I need to do my hair, and I also need to do other stuff. So I do everything in between. So while the clothes are washing, I take a shower, and then after showering, I definitely go cook food while the clothes are still going. So I just have to manage my time, honestly. And that's probably something a lot of people might have to do. But for obvious reasons, it's different for everybody. I have 2 jobs, and, I don't have kids, but I do have a family that I help clean and support and do things like that. So, but if you're a full-time mama, then yeah, you're probably going to need a lot more free time. So it's just depends on who you are, it depends on how you are. So number 4 is studying. Yes, your most basic one. But did you know studying isn't just about practicing art itself, but reading about it? I know. Or perhaps the worst thing that many artists I've noticed don't like doing is reading art history. Learning the simple things like why a circle is a circle or why colors matter will actually help you improve your right side of the brain, and understanding these things will help you naturally develop the skills. Because if you don't know, the right side of the brain is the brain that has the memorization keys and is basically, it fluctuates to kind of develop a natural effect, while the left one is the one that it's relied on the most. But that's a whole different thing. There was a book I read about it and it was super incredibly amazing. I can totally show you guys what the book is. I would highly recommend it if you're definitely one of those artists or people that love reading, like highly recommend it. Anyways, so yeah, it's more like, they even have practices for you to try along, which is great if you're into that. So let's see, they even so Art Through the Ages happens to be one of the good ones as well, where it is very pricey though. I had gotten my book for $80 at the time. It might have raised up, I'm not too sure, tariffs and whatnot, but there is that one which will literally help you. Bridgman Complete Guide to Drawing from Life is also another one as well. It helps you with perspective, learning the anatomy of the person, and just like having to understand, like what's going on and kind of how to do more learning gesture drawings, which is great because if you want to learn anatomy and you want to learn how to draw people, this is probably the best one you want to do. But if you want something super simple, you might want to get a book that's more towards your thing, like learning portraits for kids or something like that. It just really depends on what kind of art you want to do. And honestly, I think that's one of the most important things as well. You need to kind of figure out what you want to do with art. But, it takes time. So, yeah. But, So number 5 happens to also be a very interesting, controversial issue, and I will explain why. So money doesn't always have to be an issue. Do you know why this is a thing? I know, you probably hear it all the time that artists are always starving for money. They want money. They probably don't have enough money to buy this or that. Well, guess what? It's more about, well, yes, money is the root of all evil, and definitely the worst part about being an artist. Depending on the craft you start with, you can start with a limited palette or, something more controllable. I've seen many people thinking that the more sketchbooks you have, the better you get. No. So my rule of thumb, but this is personally me, is to have 2 sketchbooks per medium that I use. So if I'm oil painting, I'll get 1 pad of the canvas cotton type of thing, and I'll buy that. But I did buy 2 because, it's summer and I wanted to practice over the summer. But canvases are a different story. So for me, it's like I need to have at least 5 canvases on me. Not too big or not too crazy, but if I know that for study references, then definitely for sure. For watercolors, I only have 2 sketchbooks. A lot of the stuff was actually given to me, I believe, last semester, so I have an excessive amount, and what I did is basically just gave some away to other artists or whoever needed them. But yeah, don't have more than 2 sketchbooks per like medium, and by medium I mean art, I guess like art genre, like a genre. So in other words, like if you're an acrylic painter, have so-and-so canvases. If you're an oil painter, have so-and-so canvases. If you're a watercolor artist, so-and-so canvases. Same thing. Canvases definitely differ, but if we're talking about sketchbooks because, I'm pretty sure everybody's got a whole clutter of sketchbooks. So, yeah, and I'm honestly trying to do that too. Like, we all have that problem, honestly. We all have that problem. Mine is a little bit more managed just because I really force myself to keep 2. Maximum will be 3 sketchbooks per medium. But the only one that has like the most sketchbooks right now is watercolors, just because a lot of people were giving them to me because a lot of people don't really like watercolor art down here, so I have an excessive amount of those. But point being, just be careful with what you're getting. And to be honest, if you're kind of like me who has a budget on a budget around art, you can probably start off with like $30 a month, especially that's so much better for you. $30 can get you a good beginner's paint palette, or it can get you some paper. So it just really depends on what you're wanting to go for. If you're gonna be a digital artist, however, though, I would definitely recommend getting more towards either a tablet or an iPad. This depends on what you're going for, and that is definitely going to be a lot more money. But again, if you cannot have it now, just save up for it, because honestly, it will be a huge investment to you, and it's going to just only enhance your skills further. It really just depends on what you're going for. But yeah, if you want to try and experiment with different papers, I definitely recommend just going to either Hobby Lobby or Michael's craft store or whatever art store is near you, and get like the single paper of like the really big sheet, cut it up, and then just start using those to practice with, instead of buying a whole sketchbook because you don't know if you're gonna like that paper, or maybe the materials don't work for that specific paper, maybe the materials are too cheap, things like that. I say just definitely learn, because if you really put your mind to it, you can just like really save up and start getting the materials. It will take a while, but it is what it is. Like it's just how we have to do things, I guess. I had to save up a lot, honestly. So the last one is the biggest one. I definitely recommend, especially to the students, because this is something that you definitely need to understand when pursuing art as a passion. You want to connect with your materials. By connect, I meant, have you ever tasted the water and noticed it has different flavors, even though we're told that water has no flavor? So like Dasani, Spring Oaks, and things like that. We have different types of waters, right? But we were told growing up that for some reason water doesn't have a flavor. And guess what? It has a flavor, just like how art materials have flavors. I'm just joking. Do not eat them. Do not drink them. But each materials basically, or brands is a much better term. Each brand has their own type of signature thing that works for them. So for example, your materials have sensitivity. So the cheaper the material, the cheaper it's gonna cost. The higher the material, the higher it's gonna cost, and you will know a difference. So I tested oil pastels on, like, since I'm learning that, on different types of paper, and I've noticed on certain papers it just does not work well, while on other papers it does work well. And that's because I started understanding the paper. I would now just go up to the paper and feel it. Is it smooth? Is it rough? Does it have teeth? By teeth, it's kind of like the little blotchy texture that you feel when you go, like when you paint a house and you feel like the little bumps everywhere, kind of like a popcorn thing. Yeah, well, that's kind of like the tooth of the paper. It's what holds the material onto the paper. And the thicker the teeth, the more material can be put onto it. So, which is why watercolor is perfect for like heavy materials, because you're just constantly layering and layering on top of like the paper. So, which is great. So for sketching, a medium grit with medium teeth is perfect for you. So if you're doing like regular sketching or something, a low teeth is also just as fine, depending on what you're working with, especially if you're just doing practices, because that's exactly what you need. But yeah, what you want to do is you also want to feel the movement of the pencils. So take a pencil out and try it out right now if you want to, but like, or grab your sketchbook too. So the pencil, what you do is you hold it. Are you those people that hold it from like the tip, or are you holding it from the middle, or do you hold it from like almost near to the end of the butt of the pencil? Well, guess what? All of those are valid, and they're pretty good for what you need to do specifically. So the further away, which means it's easier to shade and it's easier to like work with. The closer means it's going to be harder on the paper. The pencil, you can control it. Same thing as a digital tablet. If you're familiar with digital work, you might be familiar with sensitivity. This is the same thing as sensitivity done for when you're using a pencil onto paper. It's just basically saying that this is what it's going to be used and how it's going to be feeling in a way. Your pencil is sensitive. Is it too rough? Is it too soft? Is it possibly just medium? Is it releasing too much pigment? Things like that, So you just have to feel the flow of the pencil and the paper. So maybe next time you go to an art supply store, go ahead and touch the paper and then read the front and what the paper says, and you'll start noticing grams. So the grams really help you out, because that's how you know the bigger the grams, the thicker the paper, and then the more heavier content you can put onto it. So little things like that, honestly. But I would definitely recommend you just try to develop a relationship with your materials, because then you're going to start understanding how they work. And honestly, it's very respectful to understand what your materials are, how they are, where they're coming from, and how they can help you, because you're the artist. You're the one that's trying to make them the artwork, and to do that, you are supposed to use materials that you are familiar with in order to create these really fantastic ideas or artworks. But of course, for all intended purposes, you definitely just want to grab that sketchbook, control that pencil, and see how it works for you, because this is also a technique from the old masters where you're able to control the block-in method, the shading method, and so many things like that. But we will talk about that in another video, because it's a whole lot of kind of worms, because the old masters are one of the, which, if you're not familiar with the old masters, it's just another way of saying the old Renaissance artists, because they were their artworks are so well done. They're so well known, especially within the community for history. because, you know, art history is also very important, which is why I had to point out that history is important to learn. You know, you need to study, you need to also understand your history, because, you know, history is, let's just say it's definitely not every artist's favorite thing. That's for sure. I personally hate it until I realized how much I really needed it, and oh boy, let's just say it helped me so much. But yeah, no, you just, I think the out of overall, the one thing you want the most is just to control your materials, understand your materials, be cost efficient, because you definitely don't want to get in debt for something that's crazy. And if you have multiple hobbies, that's totally fine, but for honestly, just stick to one or two and try to just like manage your money and your time on that, because it's going to be really important and it'll definitely benefit you in the long run. But you know, so wow, I guess that was all. I thought I had more, but no. It took me like 2 weeks just to make the script, honestly, because yeah, I know, 2 weeks within like 20 minutes. How lame. But anyways, that's also another video I want to do, how to create scripts within for YouTube and things like that, but we'll see. But yeah, so those are all the tips for today to learn art the healthy way. You know, just basically patience, time, managing key, and things like that. You definitely just want all these things within like the same thing, with the same parameters, because you definitely do not want to like overstep something and like realize, oh shoot, well, I can't do this, or I can't do that. No, you can do this, you can do that. You just need to realize that some expectations can't be met, and you also have to realize that maybe it's not always your fault for learning the wrong way. Maybe you just had a really bad teacher, because I'm gonna be honest, I've had bad teachers before, like I said, and you guys will probably see that in the next video, because I'm making a really nasty video about that, because, you know, throwing shade on him a little bit. I won't call out his name, but, you know, I don't think he cares. But let's just say he's not working as a teacher anymore, because he just was not a good teacher for obvious reasons. But yeah, anyways, thank you so much for watching, guys, and I really am happy that, oh, by the way, speaking of, we finally made it to 5.2k subscribers on YouTube. Oh my god, that's insane. I know you guys are mostly here for the Shadow content, honestly, because you guys are all my Shadow fans. Like, before, there were a lot of Shadow fans that just like follow me for that, but I am doing more artwork, and you guys have stayed for that, and I really freaking appreciate that. Like, oh my god, I'm trying to make like decisions, life-changing things over here, and I really feel like art is the way for me to go, and I'm still doing like Shadow art stuff. So if you guys follow my Instagram, which is, by the way, you can follow for free on my Instagram. Yeah, promotion myself. But anyways, if you guys do follow my Instagram, you'll notice that I've been doing a lot more work. I've been studying. I've been just doing so many things in my life, and I still want to have time for YouTube, because YouTube is super fun, and honestly, who doesn't? So anyways, I got in the video because I'm gonna go watch How to Train Your Dragon with the boyfriend right now, so excited. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, guys. I cannot wait to make more videos. Hope to see y'all soon. Hope y'all have a great Lux and Love day. Bye.